And Senator Mark Kelly, Democrat of Arizona, joins us now. Senator Kelly, I just want to first get your reaction as you are in the Senate, and we are hearing some reports from ABC News, to some degree confirmed by our sources with NBC News, that Chuck Schumer, the majority leader, had a one-on-one conversation with President Biden in Delaware on Saturday, where he, it sounds like, took the concerns of his caucus to the president and suggested he needed to step down. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I just heard that today, and we've had meetings with Senator Schumer over the last couple of weeks, talking about this issue. But I think the reality of the situation is that President Biden and Kamala Harris are our nominees. Millions of Americans voted for them across the country and, 50 states and territories. And we have an election in 110 days. And we've got to be focused on that. We've got to make sure that we work as hard as possible, not make any mistakes here. And if we do that, I'm confident that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris can be reelected.
Do you think that's the view of your fellow Democrats in the Senate as well?
Well, I'm not going to get into, our internal discussions, and I'm not going to speak, for my colleagues. I will say that there are differing views.
Let me ask you this, Senator. We were just discussing, of course, the assassination attempt, which just happened a few days ago in Butler, Pennsylvania. Obviously, your wife, Gabby Giffords, was shot and grievously wounded when serving as a United States congressperson. You know firsthand the effects of both gun violence and political violence, what it does, even just at the human level. I am curious to hear how you've reacted to this news, how it landed in your household when it's so close.
Well, certainly for me, it brought back, memories from, those days, the day that Gabby was shot. As you said, she was serving in Congress. She was meeting with her constituents. She was a member of Congress. At the time, I was an astronaut. I'd flown a few space shuttle missions. I flew 39 missions in combat. But as it would turn out, my wife, Gabby Giffords, was the person who had the dangerous job. And it's sad to think that this continues. I mean, that was 13 years ago, and today we still have this kind of political violence. I really feel for the president, former president, and his family, certainly for the family members of the firefighter that was killed that day. There is no place in our society for this kind of violence.
Do you Senator, sorry, it's Alex Wagner again. Do you have a sort of an assessment of how the Republican Party has grappled with the attempted assassination of its ticket leader? Have you gotten anything, I think, as someone who's experienced it yourself and has feelings about it and has processed it, what do you make of how the GOP is grappling with it on whole?
Well, I mean, having experienced this myself, I know it's got to be shocking for them. I mean, to think that this could happen. And I'm thankful that the shooter was not successful. The former president was extremely lucky here and was only slightly injured. But we have an election coming up, and we've got to tone down the rhetoric. I was on Capitol Hill on January 6th. And when the former president, through political speech, sent a mob up there to interfere with the peaceful transition of power. And, that shouldn't be something that's tolerated in our society. And I'm concerned if this continues that we could have additional people injured or killed. So I think it's on all of us to try to tone down the rhetoric, to focus on the election, which is a very patriotic thing that happens every 2 or 4 years in our country. And we've got to resolve our differences at the ballot box. One thing that really concerns me, Alex, is that with the selection of J.D. Vance, you have somebody that is only in that position as the vice presidential candidate because of his loyalty to Donald Trump, and that he would do what Mike Pence refused to do, which is to change the outcome of the election. And then you add on top of that his issues that he has with women's reproductive rights, which I'd be happy to get into in more detail. I'm really concerned that J.D. Vance could be a heartbeat away from the presidency.
Senator, I'm glad you brought up J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance was one of two Senate candidates in the last cycle that were heavily backed by right-wing billionaire Peter Thiel. there's kind of a group of people, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, David Sachs, some others, this kind of very right-wing tech billionaires.
Yeah, Chris, the other one was my opponent.
That's exactly
Blake
what I was going to
Masters.
ask you. You learned something because you got millions of dollars dropped on your head on behalf of Blake Masters, who you defeated. And
Right,
I'm
I know
curious
these.
what you learned from that race.
Well, they're very similar. I mean, I know these guys. I mean, J.D. Vance wants a total abortion ban. I mean, total abortion ban. And when asked about exceptions for rape and incest, I mean, what did he say? He said, 2 wrongs don't make a right. I mean, when is it wrong for a woman who has been raped to want to terminate a pregnancy? You know, and he said that these were just inconveniences, that the fact that a woman could be pregnant after being raped. I mean, an inconvenience is when you get stuck in traffic on your way home from work. You know, I have 2 daughters. I have a granddaughter. I'm really concerned about J.D. Vance being a heartbeat away from the presidency, and also just as vice president, being involved in decision-making that can affect my kids. I mean, this guy voted against protections for birth control and IVF. And, I mean, he's also, when he talks about Social Security and Medicare, talks about how this is a roadblock. I mean, those programs are lifelines for millions of seniors across our country.
Senator, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you envision in terms of MAGA 2.0 if J.D. Vance is the vice president. I mean, he comes from, or he's rooted in a form of conservatism that almost makes MAGA look moderate in some ways.
Well, I think with anything, 2.0 is usually worse than 1.0. So, I mean, I would expect this thing to eventually will go off the rails. But I think what the American people need to recognize is, you know, that their freedoms and their rights are at stake here in this election on November 5th. You know, we've got to get our voters out, showing up to make sure that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are reelected. I am really concerned about our future with 4 more years of Donald Trump in the White House, and then what could come after that with possibly with J.D. Vance.
Senator Mark Kelly, thank you for making the time tonight. Really, really appreciate it.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.